The Rebel Capitalist Show.
If you're someone that has thought about setting up a blog, setting up a YouTube channel, a podcast, growing an email list, having a business that isn't location or is location independent, I guess that's kind of the buzzword everyone's using. Then Eric's really your guy. I mean, he's the top of the totem pole when it comes to experience and knowledge in that type of business. So, I mean, how do we do it, man? How do we do it? If we're someone that's kind of stuck in a 9 to 5 gig and you're thinking, man, I don't like what's happening in the United States. I've been listening to George or I've been listening to Andrew Henderson. I really want to set up a plan B. Maybe I'm not ready to get a second passport or something like that, but maybe you are. And you're thinking, how can I do that when I'm tied to this job? I can't just, that money doesn't grow on trees. So what can that person do to get the ball rolling to where they could grow a business online and get that financial independence they're looking for?
Yeah, so I'm going to experience share here, and hopefully that's enough to give people something to do. And you tell me if you want to dive deeper on it, but I
Yeah.
feel like the experience share will be enough.
Okay.
So when I was 25 years old, I was working a 9 to 5, and I was working at this media company, and I decided to start a side hustle, which was kind of SEO consulting or marketing consulting work. What happened was one of the leads from my website reached out to the company, and it went all the way up to the COO. The next day, the COO fired me for starting a side hustle. And at that very moment, I was like, oh, wow, like I'm either going to feel really sad or happy. And I was actually really excited. So that happened immediately. But here's a practical thing you can do. Before that, I was taking a full-time paycheck while I was doing a side hustle. So I was making an additional, let's call it, I don't know, 30, 40 grand a year, right? And so 25 years old, making six figures, it's great, right? I never thought I'd make six figures growing up. And so, what happened there was they found out, okay, got busted, and then I went full in on the consulting side of things, right? And what happened afterwards was the work I was putting in. So I was taking a full-time paycheck and then doing the side hustle. That's one thing. The other thing was I was creating content on websites like Quora at the time, which is a question and answer
Yeah.
website. So it was the new hotness, and a lot of people were posting questions around marketing. I was just answering questions. About a couple weeks later, after I got fired, I got a $30,000 a month retainer to help a company that saw one of my answers on Quora. In addition to that, someone else offered me a 5% profit share and about 250 grand a year, right? So things were stacking very quickly. So I think if you want to dip your toe in the water first, that's what I did. And then afterwards, it's like, oh, I built up some content, I built up some leverage over there where I started to kind of reap the rewards. So largely I've been executing on the content playbook. It's still been compounding over time. But my thesis has always been to, once I get a good cash flow business growing, like an agency type of business, great cash flows, very hard to scale. I would use that as a funding mechanism to go find more durable sources of revenue, right? So eventually I took over a agency called Single Grain, which is the agency I own now. I bought the company for $2 out of pocket, right? It's not as glamorous as it sounds. I actually almost tanked the whole thing. And what happened afterwards was, fortunately, we're able to turn it around because we had a great team, and that's allowed me to do all the things that I'm doing now. And it's a great 8-figure business. And I don't need to say, hey, I need an angel check or anything like that. I just keep growing cash flows, and then I go invest in whatever I want.
Yeah. Well, imagine that in today's day and age, a business that actually makes money, a business that's actually profitable,
Who
that can
knew?
reinvest profits and doesn't need investors, doesn't need the Fed, doesn't need money printing in order to continue on long into the future.
Yep. Who
You're
knew,
a
right?
dinosaur, Eric. My goodness. But how'd you learn the marketing thing in the first place?
Yeah, so I came out of college during the financial crisis, so I couldn't find any job really. I got a data entry job paying me 32 grand a year, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is me doing data entry. And then I saw a guy that was 10 years older than me, and he went to Harvard. I'm like, he's doing the same job as me. At that moment, I was like, I need to get the hell out of here.
Wow.
So my friend, she's like, oh, you got to check out this digital marketing thing. She got an internship. I got one at the same time. And from that point on, I never looked back. That's when the hunger for learning really turned on. That's the thing I found. I was like, oh, I just need to stick to this. So
Okay. So now let's kind of dive into the premise of the book. And before, or when you were a kid, you were really into video games. And if I understand kind of and I've heard you talk about this on the podcast with Neil, where that really kind of shaped your thinking. It's a very similar to my story in blackjack, where I played blackjack. I read Ed Thorpe's Beat the Dealer, and that was kind of my aha moment. But it really trained my brain to think in terms of probabilities, which really helped me in business and now helps me a lot in investing. But I still try to maintain that same framework. And I think you kind of had this similar type of thing in gaming, didn't you?
Yeah, so I'll relate it to your story. So I played a ton of poker in college, so about 10 to 14 hours a day. I never went to class because all the econ kids went to this thing called econ tutor, and we basically automatically all got B's because the tutor just basically shared the answers with us. So that was great. And so I played a ton of poker. And to your point, the one thing you learn about poker is you can bring your A game 3, 6, 12 months at a time, and variance can still hit you, and you could lose all 12 months.
Right.
And so it teaches you to be resilient. It also teaches you to manage your tilt or your frustration. And so that ties directly in with business. And so the other thing is you talk about thinking in probabilities or thinking in bets. It forces you to think long term. That's one thing, or else you fail. And it forces you to think into bets. Like sometimes if those of you that know how to play poker, if there are a couple of opponents in on Texas Hold'em and you have a straight flush draw, I'm probably going all in, right? Like I'm a slight favorite. I'm going to go all in, right? And we'll see where the chips fall. And that's not the way to invest, but I'm just saying that's what happened. And that's largely how I looked at the single grain quote unquote acquisition when I bought it for $2, because my thinking at the time was, even though Neil was a partner, he's like, dude, you should get out. There's no brand equity. There's nothing here. As a friend, you should get out. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, there's an asymmetric bet here. There's asymmetric upside because if I win, there's unlimited upside. If I lose, I gain the experience of running a company. And then I've capped my downside because I put in a contingency saying that the company failed, I would owe nothing. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be,
Right.
but that largely ties in with my poker thinking, right? It's an all in bet, but was it really all in? I think it was heads I win, tails I don't lose much.
Yeah. But then how did the video games help you with the marketing side of it?
Yeah.
I've heard you
So
talk about that with Neil.
yeah, I mean, largely the book is how I think about life as a game every day. Like it's fun to play. And so I remember one of my buddies, he worked in investment banking at Goldman. He worked at a startup as well. And he was looking at what I was doing one day because we tried and failed at a senior living business. And he's like, dude, this is just like how we were playing games in high school. Like we played a lot of strategy games, we played a lot of first person shooters. And so the beauty of the marketing world is I can keep switching. So I can do podcasts like this. We can create videos. We can do webinars. We can do email stuff. Or I think, doing deals or hiring people, like all these things are little games. And I wake up every day is like, which game do I get to play? And so to me, business and marketing both feel like games. I'm sure you feel that like what you're doing is very much just fun every day.
Yeah, well, I enjoy it, else I wouldn't do it. I mean, I
Exactly.
retired in 2012, and I just got super passionate about macro. The investing component is something I had to do because I didn't want to let anyone else manage my money, and I didn't have enough money to where I could just live off, my savings. I needed to make about a 6 or 7% return
Yeah.
in order to maintain my lifestyle, not without drawing down my savings.
Yeah.
So, but then I got into macro through the Free to Choose series with Milton Friedman. And that's what took me down the rabbit hole. Then I just became obsessed and I was just passionate about it.
Yeah.
And then, with the YouTube channel, basically, I just started talking about it. And I had a huge edge because I did the TV commercial prior to that. But the whole point is, with what I do on YouTube or the podcast or any of that, I would literally be doing the exact same thing if I had a YouTube channel or not. I would be listening to Macro Voices, Real Vision. I'd be listening to Brent Johnson, Jeff Snyder, Luke Croman, Lynn Alden. I'd be doing that 8 hours a day anyway. So all I do is just turn on the webcam and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that whole Japanese concept called ikigai, where it's like it's what you love and what you can make money doing, and what you're passionate about. All those things combined. I mean, it's finding that sweet spot. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, like you're like not everyone's that lucky, right?" Like I call BS on that because we're all human beings, and everything you see built around you is by human beings. So I think it's just a matter of finding that source of contentment and sticking with it. Because for me in the beginning, you talk about kind of being Like a lot of entrepreneurs have ADD. I was trying all these different businesses. I tried a magic website. I tried a senior living website, right? I tried an IT training website. It's just, just trying to make money isn't going to do it. It's you got to be like George. You got to be passionate about macro, or you got to be passionate. By the way, I don't play games anymore because my favorite thing is business, but I just kind of look at it in that lens. So.